right, so I'm going to be talking about setting up continuous development with Laravel and Jenkins. In the corner of every slide, you're going to see my Twitter handle, and the reason that I put this on every slide is because if you choose to tweet about this talk or take pictures of this talk, I would really appreciate it if you would tag me in those so that I get to see them. I just wanted to mention that this is my elephant collection, and as you can see, I do have room for more if you happen to have elephants that you just need to get rid of. All right, so where this talk is headed. I am just going to walk through a very minimal continuous development setup for Laravel using Jenkins, and then we're going to talk about some ways in which you might move past that at the end, but this is not intended to tell you everything you could possibly do with Jenkins, because that would take longer than this conference is running. All right, so why do we want to bother with setting up continuous development anyway? Well, first of all, continuous development means that you set up multiple stages, like test, staging, production. And with a continuous development setup, all of your epically, eventually long deployment checklists, they all get run automatically for you every single time. And like with this particular kind of setup, every time you make a commit or a merge to a branch, that particular stage will automatically update, including running all of your tests, doing all of your setup. Everything happens automatically. You don't have to remember it. And it allows you to be deploying and evaluating quickly and constantly. And it keeps all of those little oopsie moments from ever getting to production. Okay, so why Jenkins? There are actually a lot of options available for continuous fill in the blank for whatever verb you want. And the reason that I'm focusing on Jenkins is because it has a few factors that are unique when all combined. It is free. I do want to mention that there is a thing called Forge for Laravel, which is designed to be super easy to use, but it also has a monthly fee. And it is also, like most of the continuous integration services, it is a hosted service. And the reason that I initially got into Jenkins was because I was in a situation where the deploy process that I was working on included a company's internal server, which needed to never be accessed by an external or certainly third-party server. So there are some situations in which it's really just not a good idea to use a hosted continuous integration service. So yeah, it's free. It's all in one. You can actually eventually pull in enough packages together to get similar functionality, but this is an all-in-one solution. It's been around a long time. It's well maintained. So it'll get you where you want to go, and it's open source, and I love open source. Okay, so this talk has some assumptions. We are going to assume that you already know how to set up a LIMP or LAMP stack, that you are using Git with Github, and that you have a DigitalOcean account with an SSH key already set up. Now, why DigitalOcean? This is certainly not a requirement of this setup. The reason I'm using DigitalOcean in this example is because it's very easy to use. It's what I use, and they have great documentation. I am a hardware hacker hobbyist, and so when I'm talking to people about hardware, I always say Adafruit, because Adafruit has enough awesome documentation that it acts like a safety net for noobs that are getting into it. So if this is your first experience with setting up something complicated, like, say, Jenkins, it can be really nice to have some of your fundamental technology be chosen specifically for the safety net of great docs. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do when we're setting up this simplified continuous development process is we are going to spin up a new droplet to be our Jenkins server. We're going to select Ubuntu 16 or 18. We're going to select a size based on anticipated usage. Remember, scaling up is easy, scaling down is not. Select your SSH key. And this does assume that you've already got one set up. And then name it something that you are going to remember the purpose of. I, of course, have named mine Jenkins. And then hit create. And it'll create that IP address, which you will then copy. All right, so we're going to log into the new droplet using root at the IP address we just copied. And then we are going to create a non-root user, because getting out of root as quickly as possible is always step one. So I created a user named Margaret for reasons. You might want to use a different name, but if you want to use Margaret, that's fine too. Then you want to give them sudo access and su into that user. The defaults are fine. All right, so then we're going to need to set up a firewall. I do want to note that in some of the DigitalOcean documentation, it assumes that UFW is enabled by default, and it's not, but that's very simple. One more step. Just don't like let that catch you up. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out by denying incoming and allowing outgoing, and then we are only going to allow 2 different ports, 22 for SSH and 8080 because that's going to be Jenkins web admin panel. And then we're going to enable, and then we're going to check the status. Checking the status isn't required, but in many of these steps, you'll notice that the last thing that I do is just show you the command that lets you check and make sure you just got the previous one right, because that's how we don't end up in the weeds. All right, so now we're ready to actually install Jenkins, and we're going to do that by, oh, by the way, I don't actually expect you to just memorize all of the URLs that are involved in this. I will be posting my slides with the Laracon Twitter tag, and it will have all of my speakers' notes. So not only will you get the URLs and stuff that are in the slides, you'll also get the ones that are in my speaker notes, which include some of those safety net docs that I mentioned. All right, so we're going to add the Jenkins package to app, and then we're going to get it. Going to get apt-get update, and then install Jenkins, and then hit Y to confirm the space usage, and then we are going to sudo system control start Jenkins to actually start it, and then we're going to sudo system control status Jenkins to see it. Do it, view it. All right, so now we're ready to actually take a look at that web admin panel that we talked about. So we're going to access that by we're going to go to the IP address of the DigitalOcean droplet that we just created, :8080, because that's the port that we've enabled for the Jenkins admin. And then we're going to, from our terminal, we're going to use the cat command to have it print out var lib Jenkins secrets initial admin password. And that's not something you have to remember, because here on the opening screen, it actually will print it out for you. This is where your default password is. So you just cat and then copy paste that path. And that's your default password. So then it's going to come up on this screen, and we're going to just go ahead and install all of the default plugins. And then we're going to get a copy, and then we're going to check Twitter. We're going to wait a minute, then we're going to come back, and it's going to be done. Yay! At which point, we're going to create our admin user, which, very straightforward, but it's very important because as soon as you've created your admin user, you can go back and delete that default admin password. Very important step. So after you've filled out the admin form and submitted it, you get this happy message, Jenkins is ready. Yeah, we're not even halfway done, but Jenkins is ready. All right, so at this point, we've removed our initial admin password. And then we are going to we're going to make sure that we're still SSH'd into the Jenkins server, and we're going to change into the new Jenkins user, which doing that Jenkins setup has created. And then we're going to create an SSH key for that new Jenkins user. And use the default. Hit enter 3 times, take the default. All right, so use the cat command to go ahead and print your new public key and copy it. The public key will start with SSH raw and end with your GitHub email address. I know that if you've ever done this before, you know, but the first time is hard. All right, so then we're going to go to our GitHub account, and we are going to click on our account image, and then we are going to click on settings, and then we are going to click on SSH and GPG keys, and then we're going to click new SSH key. We're going to name the key. I suggest Jenkins for a name. We are going to paste the public key that we just created on our Jenkins server for the Jenkins user into the key space. Then we're going to click Add SSH Key, and at this point, it may ask you to confirm your GitHub password. All right, so now we're going to have a second server, because although it is technically possible to run your Jenkins instance on your deploy server, I really don't suggest it, because when Jenkins is running a deploy, that is a very, very heavy process, and all of your performance on your actual projects will just crumble, and you will be sad. So we're going to create another server to be our deploy server. And here you've got a sample directory structure, and there's a little intentional flexibility here that I want to point out. I like to use Jenkins even for personal projects. It really helps me because I've always got multiple projects going, and so I might forget if I don't just go ahead and have all of my deploy steps saved somewhere. And because they're small personal projects, I don't want to pay for a DigitalOcean Droplet for every single one. So I will have multiple projects on the same server. But this is entirely optional. I want to point out that here, what you've got under your web root, and I use var www for my web root, but you use whatever you use. But under that, what you can do is you can have a directory for every project on that server, or if it's just one server, you can just eliminate that directory. But under that, what you want to create is a directory for every stage that you want to create. I think pretty default is test, staging, production, because this is very simplified. We're just going to talk about staging and production. But you can have 5 stages. You can have 20 stages if you want. And although I'm showing you having all of the stages on one deploy server, you can actually have this on 1 stage per server. And of course, for your bigger projects and for your longer running projects, that's the way you want to go. But again, we're doing the very, very simple version here. All right, so in your directory, what you want is a directory for, in each directory for a stage, you're going to want a releases directory, you're going to want a deploy directory, and then you're going to want a soft link called current. And at this point, it doesn't matter what that soft link is a soft link to, because we're going to use that later. This is more like just a placeholder. So inside our deploy directory, we're going to put our .env file for our project. And I want to pause here on the deploy directory, because the reason we're putting our .env into the deploy directory is because this is something that we're going to want to have be constant through every deploy. And we're not going to commit this to our repo, and so we need to have it in a place where we can keep it consistent. So if there are other elements to your site, for instance, I have used this for, say, user-uploaded images. That's not going to be part of your repo. It needs to stay consistent on your server between builds. And so anything that's like that goes in this deploy directory. OK, so after that, you probably want to reload your web server. All right, so now we have 2 servers. We have our Jenkins server and we have our deploy server. And we're going to need to build that relationship. So we're going to add a user named Jenkins on our deploy server. Remember, we already have a Jenkins user on our Jenkins server. This is going to be its buddy. That's where they're going to hit. So we're going to add a Jenkins user to our deploy server. We're going to give it sudo access. We're going to change into that user, and then we're going to make an SSH directory, and then we are going to pico or whatever your VI, whatever you want, into that directory, into a new file called authorized_keys. And that's where we can paste the public key from our Jenkins user. So on our Jenkins server, we're going to cat the SSH key, and then we're going to copy that into our new authorized keys file on our deploy server, and then we're going to save, and now they can access each other. At this point, you also want to go ahead and install whatever web server components you use on your deploy server, also on your Jenkins server, because all of your testing for your deploys is going to happen on that Jenkins server. So the deploy and the Jenkins server need to line up when it comes to things like what PHP version you're using. All right, so now on our deploy server, we want to open up or create the first time, a sudoers file for the Jenkins user. And the reason that this is important is because there's Jenkins can't answer questions. It's going to go straight through. And so if it's given a prompt, like for entering its sudo password, it's just going to hang. It's not going to be able to do that. So anything that we need the Jenkins user to be able to run as sudo, we put a little exception in this file saying the Jenkins user specifically doesn't need to enter their password to do these specific commands. And it is so important to make these as specific as possible. So here we have a basic, what you would put in for like an Nginx setup, on a Laravel project. So you've got, you want to be able to restart the Nginx service. You want to be able to restart PHP FPM. And then you want to be able to change the permissions on the specific directories in a Laravel project that you're going to need to update when the new build of the repo comes through. And so here we've got like the staging storage and staging current. Now you notice that the directory, the subdirectory that it's using is current. That soft link that we created to nowhere. That's going to be important later. Right now, it's not doing anything, but later it's going to reference whatever our most recent build is, which is why we're targeting that here. Other things that you might need to have change mod access to include the Bootstrap cache. But here we've got storage, but also Bootstrap cache. And as things change, that might change as well. Just remember to go ahead and reference this file for anything that the Jenkins user is going to need to be able to run as sudo. All right, so now we're going to jump back over to the Jenkins admin panel. And we're going to go to Manage Jenkins, and then we are going to select Manage Plugins, and we're going to click on the Available tab, and then we're going to search for Publish over SSH. And we're going to select that and install it, and then we are going to select the checkbox that says Restart Jenkins when install is complete, and then we're going to wait a moment, and it's going to reload, and then we're going to log in again. All right, now we're going to click on Manage Jenkins, Configure System. We're going to find the SSH section, which is way down at the bottom, so you just scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll, find the SSH section, and then you're going to put in your path to your key. Maybe this is home Jenkins SSH ID RSA, maybe it's var lib Jenkins, wherever you put that key, that's what needs to go here. And then click the Add button. Okay, so this will pop up. For the name, whatever your deploy server is named. For the host name, that's the IP address of the deploy server. Then the username is Jenkins, and the remote directory is your web root. For me, that's var www. If you use a different web root, put in your web root. Then go ahead and hit the test configuration button. It's not required, but just, anytime you have a test that I've done this right button, select the test that I've done this right button. And then go ahead and save. All right, now we're ready to create a new project. Yay! All right, so we're going to click on Jenkins and then create new jobs and then name it for your project and the stage that you're creating the job for. Say your project is named Website, and we're creating a job to deploy the staging stage. So in that case, I would name it something like staging.website. But it just needs to signal very clearly to you what project is being deployed by this job and what stage, so that at a glance, so that you don't accidentally deploy the wrong stage or the wrong project. Then select Freestyle Project and click OK. All right, so what this is going to bring you to is a gigantic web form. We're going to go through it section by section. At the top, in the general section, you're going to select GitHub project, and we're going to add the GitHub project URL to the project URL field. Then we're going to select Git and enter the repository URL. Yes, this is the same URL again. And then for credentials, we're going to click Add Jenkins the first time. And that's going to bring up this form. And then we're going to select SSH username and private key. We're going to put in our project GitHub username and then select the radio button that says From the Jenkins Master SSH and click Add. And what this is going to do is it's going to create that credential in the dropdown. And for any future jobs that you create in this Jenkins install, you'll just be able to select that from the dropdown. So select that from the dropdown. And then under that, you'll see something that says branch specifier. And this is a key part of the magic. So for every stage that you want to be doing continuous development with, you want to have its own branch. So we're going to target, since this is the staging job, we're going to target the staging branch. And what that means is anytime I make a commit to the staging branch, or say I merge a pull request to the staging branch, that's going to automatically trigger a new build. because in the next section, under build triggers, we're going to select GitHub hook trigger for git polling. No vowels, I don't know how to pronounce that. And then under a build environment, we're going to select add timestamps to the console output. Okay, so under build, you're going to have a bunch of options. The option that you want is execute shell. Include all of the commands across as many build steps as it makes sense for future you or other team members to be able to easily read and understand it. You can put it all in one. For a simple project that's a Laravel build, I use 2 because I only like a handful of lines in each one so that I can read it. The computer doesn't need that. My human meat brain needs that. So my first execute build section reads like this. We are going to, we'll get to that. That's garbage collection, that first line. Then we're going to go to composer install. Then we're going to copy our .env.example to .env. Then we're going to do PHP artisan key generate, PHP artisan migrate refresh seed, assuming that you use a seeded database to run your tests. If not, don't add that part. And then you're going to run PHP unit, probably the most important part of this whole thing. Then you're going to run PHP unit. Don't forget to run PHP unit. It's really good. Oh, and then truncate storage logs, laravel.log, size 0. This is not necessary the first time it builds. It becomes necessary over time. Don't let your entire hard drive be eaten by logs. Oh, and these logs aren't vital to you. These aren't the deploy logs. These are just the testing logs that we're creating on the Jenkins server, so it's totally fine to trash them. And then in the second execute build step, we're just going, okay, we're going to go one directory up from where we are. Then we're going to tarball the directory that we were just in, where we built this branch of our repository. And then we're going to move that tarball into the directory where we just built our repository. And then we're going to change back into that directory. So we hop out, we tarball the directory, we move the tarball into the directory, and then we move ourselves back into the directory. Okay. And then we scroll down to the next section, which is post-build action. And it's kind of funny that it's called that because it's post the test build, but it's actually the vital step for getting it onto your deploy server. So add post-build action in the dropdown, send build artifacts over SSH, because we're going to just have our Jenkins server take care of this for us. For the name, we're going to select our deploy server. Remember, we did that form earlier, so it's already there. Then under transfers source files, we're going to say the name of this project. So for me, staging.website /build.tar.gz, because that's the tarball that we just created. And that's what we're going to transfer over SSH. And then remote directory assumes the web root. That's what you provided. So everything after the web root to get to the releases directory is what you add in remote directory. So in the default example directory structure that I showed you, that would be website/staging/releases. All right, and then under those little blanks that we just filled in, there's this big old text field called exec command. And exec command is where you want to put all of the commands that need to be run on your deploy server in order to actually deploy this new build. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're in the right directory, and we're going to unpack our tarball. And that's going to create a directory within the releases directory of that name. Then we are going to remove the tarball, and then we are going to change directory into the new directory that was just created by unpacking that tarball. And now we are going to do the same steps to deploy this, only not for test. So we're not going to do any of that. We're not going to create a new database and seed it or anything, because we just did that. We don't have to. So we're going to composer install, and then we're going to go up a directory, And then we are going to move this new directory that was just created by unpacking our tarball to a new directory of almost the same name, but then appended the build number. And that is automatically generated by Jenkins, so you do have access to it here, which allows you to create a unique name for each build, which is how we're not overwriting the previous directory every time. And then we're going to remove the default named unpacked tarball directory because we don't need it anymore. And then we're going to cd up to our staging directory. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove that soft link named current, and then we're going to create a new soft link to the directory that we just created with our brand new build. Then we are going to restart Nginx, we're going to restart PHP 7, and we are going to copy the .env that we are keeping in deploy because we want it to be consistent into that current directory. And then we're going to enter the current directory, the imaginary current directory, the soft link. All right, then we're going to do our Laravel magic. We're going to clear the cache. We're going to clear the view cache. We're going to make sure that we've done change mod on the storage and the bootstrap cache directories. And change mod commands can't be run before this stuff is in the current directory because the current directory is the one with the consistent name, and therefore that's the one we are able to put into that sudoers file to be as specific with our exceptions as possible. Then we click save. Yay, you did it. At this point, absolutely celebrate because, oh my goodness. But then there's more. So at that point, you need to click build now, and then click on the build when it appears under build history. It will create a link for you while it's building. Click on it, and then click console output, and you'll be able to watch your build. And so if it hangs, if there are errors, you're just gonna go back to that config, that giant web form config, and tweak things until it runs perfectly. So now let's talk about beyond that. Obviously, that's just staging. You'll want to do one for test, production, one for like daisies and hopes and dreams. However many stages you want for your project. It's basically just that process over again. Only just remember to target the correct branch. So what if you're not using GitHub? What if you're using Gitlab? Now, the reason I didn't choose to spend a lot of time on Gitlab is because Gitlab's docs for integrating with Jenkins are really, really good. So just to run through it very, very quickly, what the different process is you'd install the Gitlab plugin in your Jenkins admin. Then you would click on Manage Jenkins, find the Gitlab section, put your project URL in something called Gitlab host URL, and then put your Gitlab API token in API token. Then in your job config, you would use your GitLab repository URL as your Git URL. You set the name as, under advanced, you set the name as origin, and then there's a ref spec thing that you need to set, and I'm not gonna try and read out that ridiculous string, but just know that it's very easy to look up through the GitLab docs. And then under the branch specifier, with GitHub, we do */branch name, and with GitLab, we do origin/branch name, which is really not that different. And then on the GitLab site for your project, you will need to select integrations, Jenkins CI. Very straightforward, which is why I did not spend a lot of time on it. But what if I'm using another framework? Really not that big a deal. You just replace the commands as relevant. All of that stuff that we put in those execute windows, that's just the exact same, or at least almost exactly the same things that you would do if you were doing this deploy by hand, like through your terminal. So just whatever those command differences are, just make those changes in those command text boxes. Oh, and don't forget to update the sudoers Jenkins file based on what sudo commands the Jenkins user needs to be able to run for whatever framework you're using. All right, what about pipelines? You may have heard of pipelines because that is the new hotness for Jenkins. Well, pipelines really aren't that different. This is a pipeline, only instead of code, it's all in a web form. And so the reverse is also true. A pipeline is what we just did, only instead of a web form, all of that information is in a code structure and in a file called Jenkins file. And the big perk to that is that means that once you've got this perfect in its code form, it can go into version control. So that's nice. If you decide that you want to go this route, which I definitely recommend if you've got like a really big, really long-running, really complicated project, eventually you want to get this deploy process exactly how you want it, and then you'll want to put it in code so that you can put it in version control. So for that, you'll need the pipeline plugin, but I also suggest you just go ahead and grab the Blue Ocean plugin, which is a little UI upgrade specifically for the pipeline part of Jenkins. And this is what that looks like if you do that little UI upgrade. It changes it to look blue. And it just has a little bit more of a friendly getting started process. Like when you first install that plugin, you'll see this, welcome to Jenkins, would you like to create a new pipeline? And then the creation process, it's very friendly. It looks like that, very friendly. But it's basically the same thing. You just go through and you select where are your repos? Which organization are we looking in? Of these repos, which one do you want to build for? And at that point, when you go ahead and click the next bit, it will look for the Jenkins file in that repo. And if it finds a Jenkins file, it will attempt to run that job right then. If it doesn't find one, then it'll error. All right, so this is a rather short talk slot, so I'm not going to actually take questions right now, but you can come find me. I will be at the Twilio sponsor table most of the rest of today and tomorrow, so if you have questions, please feel free to come ask me. I will also be posting all of my slides and all of my speaker notes on Twitter with the Laracon tag, so you should be able to find it. And that's it. Thank you very much.